this computer. Okay, welcome to the August astrophotography group meeting. We have a real special guest here with us tonight. The first thing I want to do is to open the floor up to if there's anybody got any questions of the experts that they want some input on. If not, we'll go into the presentation. So open the floor. Anybody have any questions, particularly the newbies?
I have a quick question, if I may, Merrill. This is
Sure.
Mikhail.
Yeah, how are you?
Good, thank you. The software preference for planetary imaging for planetary experts, SharpCap or Fire Capture?
Either. I mainly use SharpCap, but I've also used Fire Capture. I mean, Fire Capture to me is, it's okay. I just haven't got used to it, but I know with I've been using SharpCap for a lot longer and it's more familiar with it, but either one of them.
Yeah, I like
Okay.
SharpCap myself.
SharpCap, I mean, they got the free version, which you get you the most stuff done. If you want some of the more advanced features, you're going to end up paying for like a yearly thing, whereas Fire Capture is free out of the gate.
Okay.
But SharpCap's only $20 a year or something like that.
At most.
Yeah, it breaks the bank, I tell you.
Yeah, it's not much.
And John, I love your background.
Yeah, I got the lab back there digging another crater on the moon.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Any other questions?
I have a question. Which mission was that from?
I think it was a Dog Star mission. I don't know.
It's flat. It must be an 11 or 12.
18.
It was the Apollo 17 one.
Okay, well, given that we don't have any more questions, our presenter is taking time out of his crazy busy schedule. Did you have surgeries today too?
Yeah.
Okay, and you must have got up at the crack of dawn or before. Yeah. Okay, and it's 5 o'clock there and 7 o'clock here, and wow, I really appreciate you taking the time. But we got Dr. Rod Pommier, who did the presentation a few months ago about the glorious globulars. And he also has the expertise in processing them and fix insight. So we were able to twist his arm and get him to do it two presentations. In fact, he's got another one coming up with TAIC with the Lens Dark Nebulas.
Yeah, September 21.
We might take a look at that one too. Get you to come.
I hope you do. I could use some viewers.
That would be really cool. Okay, so having said that, Rod, you have control of the machine and take as much time as you want. What about questions? You would stop you during or save them to the end?
I put a couple of breaks in for questions.
Okay. All right, it's all yours.
Okay, let's go to share screen.
Yeah, we see it.
Everything's good.
Screen's working?
Yep, looks great, Rod.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for inviting me back. If you saw the earlier talk, I'm going to apologize up front for a little bit of repetition. The story behind this is rather interesting because I first did this as a talk about globulars for astrophotography purely. For the Astro Imaging channel, and then after that, I was asked by you guys to give it to your general meeting, so I morphed it into more of an observing talk, and now I've been asked to give it to your astrophotography group, so it's reverted back to a bit of an astrophotography talk. So if you watch that show with your general meeting, you're going to have seen some of this stuff before, but I took a lot of it out and cut it back down to astrophotography. And as I frequently say to people, learning is repeating and re-repeating that which is important to know. So we'll go with that. So, I just personally love globular clusters, and I know people like Rick do too. These dazzling spheres of hundreds of thousands to sometimes millions of stars just never fail to delight me. And we can always count on things like M13 and Omega Centauri being shown at all star parties and observatory tours. And in the earlier thing, I mentioned that, sadly, most astrophotographers have actually only imaged a few of the available globular star clusters available to us in the sky. If I go look at any prominent astrophotographer's website, they've got tons of galaxies, nebulae, dark nebulae, planetary and solar system stuff. And yeah, they'll have the token image of M13 and Omega Centauri, but very few display many other globular star clusters. So, I have to ask, why is that? And I think it has to do with a misconception about globulars. And this is a story I told visually during the other talk, because I used to be a tour guide at the University of Oregon's Pine Mountain Observatory, and I would do film astrophotography outside this 24-inch dome because the university was kind enough to let me run all the extension cords I needed to run my clock drive and my laptop and my dew zapper and my hair dryer and lamps and things in exchange for giving tours to the tourists who came by on the weekend. And so as it got dark, the crowd would show up and I'd seat them on folding chairs inside the dome. But on the wall, we had these posters from Mount Hamilton Observatory taken with the 100-inch telescope of M13, M51, M33, and a few other things. And as I always say, the excitement of these tourists as they looked at those posters and looked up at this giant telescope hovering above them was just palpable because they couldn't wait to see these things. So once it got dark, I always started with M13. And the reason for that was very obvious because it is an object in the sky that actually looks like the picture on the wall. In fact, the view through the telescope looked better than the picture on the wall because the picture on the wall shows that it's burned out and all solid white in the center. And when you look through the telescope, you have this just glorious resolution right down to the core of just countless stars. So the oh my gods and things as people look through this telescope just reverberated through the dome. I didn't get those reactions as I moved on to other objects. I mean, when people saw M51 as just two little glows and one part of a spiral arm, they'd say, that's it. And I'd say, yep, that's it. And M33 was even worse. And, as you moved on to the Lagoon Nebula and things like that, people were just disappointed. Their disappointment really knew no bounds. So to avoid a riot, I would go quickly back to globular star clusters because they were bright and they looked just like the pictures on the wall. But there were always some jaded amateur astronomers in the group that had driven a long distance because they wanted to see those faint fuzzies. And it wasn't very long before one of them would yell at me and say, stop showing us globular clusters. And then came the words that wounded my heart, which were, if you've seen one globular, you've seen them all. And of course, the implication for us astrophotographers from that statement is that if you've imaged one globular like M13, well, then you've imaged them all, and you don't need to collect a lot of others. So the whole point of this talk tonight is to convince you that that simply is not true. And while globulars may not exhibit the infinite variations in size, shape, and arrangement that we find in other classes of deep sky objects, they still exhibit considerable diversity if you know what to shoot and what to bring out in your image processing. So the proof of concept of this is that over the past decade, I've had 13 of my images of globular clusters published in Astronomy magazine. So that's, essentially going along a little faster than one a year. And how did I do that? Well, the simple thing is I just simply didn't let them look all the same. I can assure you the magazine had no interest in them publishing an image that looks just like the last one I had sent them. So you've got to bring out some diversity. And the way you do that is you can choose different globular clusters that will, of course, look different. And some of it has to do with image processing that we'll go over tonight. So here's the program outlined. First of all, we're going to talk about why image globulars. Then we're going to talk about what we could emphasize in our image processing to make one globular image distinct from another so they don't look all the same. And some of that's going to be dictated by the targets that we choose. So we'll talk a bit about how to choose globular targets for different outcomes. And then we're going to do an image processing demonstration to see if we can actually produce some decent images with our software. So why photograph globulars? Well, as I said earlier, they're beautiful, but let's not forget they're colorful. Through most apertures, there just isn't enough light to stimulate the cones in our retina, and things look black and white. If you get up to 30-inch Dobbs and things like that, you actually can start seeing some of the colors in the globular star clusters with your own eye. And, Rick described very beautifully the religious experience he had pointing that gigantic Dob at Omega Centauri and just looking at it. And I'm sure he saw colors with that. But when it comes to astrophotography, we can definitely capture these colors and bring them out and make these objects look beautifully colorful. They have large apparent sizes. These are big targets. A lot of globular clusters have an apparent size that is a substantial fraction of the size of the full moon. So they're not going to be like little ditzel galaxies and things like that where we can barely tell what's going on. They take up a lot of area on our chips. And you can image them with various systems because of their large size. So if you have a short focal length system with a wide field, you can capture a globular in the context of its surroundings. Some of the coolest pictures of globulars I've seen have been when a comet's going by within reach of a wide field system, and you've got a beautiful color, sparkling globular with a nice green comet and its long tail going by. With long focal length systems like I use, you can get into the center of the globular for real high resolution detail. They're bright. And that makes they're easier to find than other galaxies. I mean, a lot of objects when we shoot, we don't even know if it's on the chip till you've shot an exposure and seeing up, it's a lovely case of wrong ascension and you have to readjust and find it. And this means you can also image them when the moon is bright in the sky. They'll tolerate that really quite well. We can subtract out the brighter background sky more than we can with faint galaxies and nebulosity. And it also means you can image them from light polluted cities, which is where a lot of us live and do our imaging. And you don't need expensive narrowband filters like you do for SHO and Hubble palette work because they just really work just fine with LRGB or one-shot color. So what makes one globular image distinct from another? Well, some of the things we can exploit are that they have foreground objects, and that can be different between one set of globulars and another. There are also some background objects that we can see in different images that we can exploit. There is the Shapley-Sawyer classification, and I'll talk quite a bit about that and how we can bring that out and show diversity among globulars. And then we have actual features inside the globular clusters themselves. So let's talk about foreground objects as the first object of diversity. So most of the time when we're looking at a globular star cluster, it's well away from the plane of the Milky Way galaxy, which means it's out in a sparsely populated region of the sky without a lot of foreground stars like M5 is here in this image. But there are some exceptions where we can actually view globular star clusters through considerable portions of the Milky Way and capture a lot of foreground stars that really make the image dramatic and captivating. So this is M56 in Lyra, and I say too bad because everybody points their telescope and photographs M57 in Lyra, the ring nebula, and very few people are willing to move their telescope a short distance towards Albireo and capture this gem. So this is shining through a great deal of colorful Milky Way stars. And so to capture an image like this, where you have this globular star cluster amidst this colorful field of Milky Way stars, is a real treat. M56 is actually one of the smallest globulars in the Messier catalog, and it's because it actually truly is small. One of the things I mentioned in my talk is that this is actually an alien globular cluster that was captured when the Milky Way collided with the Gaia Enceladus galaxy about 9 billion years ago. And it's made a number of passages through our Milky Way disk and been stripped a lot of its stars. And it is one globular cluster that actually orbits retrograde from all the other globulars in our galaxy and the actual direction of rotation of the galaxy itself, which is a clear proof of its extragalactic origin. That one got published in, the August 2024 issue of Astronomy. M22 in Sagittarius is another spectacular example of a globular cluster with a lot of foreground Milky Way stars. But this situation is a bit different. This is a very dusty region of the Milky Way. And so while we still have a lot of foreground Milky Way stars down in the Sagittarius hub of the galaxy, the globular cluster itself is shining through a tremendous amount of dust. So if you actually get the color balance of this globular star cluster correct, it's actually quite yellow. And that's because of all the scattering of the blue wavelengths occurring from the intervening dust. And if you notice, we've got some blue stragglers that are members of the cluster itself, but they're quite faded blue compared to these actual foreground true Milky Way stars that are on the other side of the dust. And that's because so much more of the dust is the blue light is being scattered than the other wavelengths. So this is another great treat. And M22 is one of the largest apparent sizes of a globular cluster, so it really fills the field of view. When it comes to globular clusters in the Milky Way, M71 takes the Oscar, or the Emmy, if you want to say that for Rick's benefit. For a lot of years, actually 2 centuries, M71 was misclassified as an open star cluster, just thought to be another bright open star cluster in the Milky Way galaxy. But Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams of it show that it does have a short horizontal red giant branch way down low on the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, which is, very incontrovertible proof that it is 12 to 13 billion years old and therefore has to be a globular star cluster because we don't have any open star clusters in our galaxy that are that old. We can move on to background objects. So as I said earlier, a lot of star clusters, globular clusters are out of the plane of the Milky Way. And that means there aren't going to be a lot of stars and it opens up the opportunity to spot galaxies in the background. So here is M92 in Hercules, and I say also too bad because everybody looks at M13 in Hercules and few people shift their telescope a short distance to see M92, which I would argue is nearly as spectacular as M13. And it's another nice large globular cluster. But the hawk-eyed among you will notice over here, we've got a very nice spiral galaxy that was captured in this image. And this is MCG 735-58, which lies about 400 million light years distant. So this gives an incredible depth of field to the image because here we have this globular star cluster that's at about 30,000 light years. And in the background, we've got a galaxy that is 400 million light years away. Same is very true for M13. So here's this image of M13, and up here we have a spiral galaxy that is in the same field of view, and that is IC 4617. That lies 550 million light years in the background, giving again a very big depth of field. A lot of you with wider field systems than I have will know that to the upper right of this would be NGC 6207, which is a even larger spiral galaxy that lies only about 67 million light years from Earth. And that always makes a very captivating image where you can see M13, IC 4617, and NGC 6207 all in the same field of view. So let's move on to the Shapley-Sawyer class. This is something that I really think we should strive to bring out in our images of globular star clusters. So this is Harlow Shapley. He was an astronomer who was in charge of the Mount Wilson Observatory at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. And he was in charge of the 60-inch reflector that was funded by Andrew Carnegie for George Ellery Hale. And he was the guy who calculated the distances to globular star clusters using Cepheids and our Lyrae stars and figured out that we are not at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. We're about halfway out from the disk. But during this process, he worked along with Helen Sawyer, who later became Helen Sawyer Hogg when she got married, a woman astronomer. And working on globular clusters, they designed the Shapley-Sawyer classification system between 1927 and 1929. So this divides all visible globular clusters into 12 classes by Roman numerals. And if you want to know more about this, I wrote an article that goes into the great detail about this in the August 2014 issue of Astronomy and illustrated that with examples of each of the 12 classes from the Messier catalog. But I'll give you the Reader's Digest version here. So it has to do with the density of the stars in the core of the globular. A characteristic of globulars is that the stars tend to be concentrated toward the center of the cluster and then have scattered peripheral stars. So to wrap it up in a Reader's Digest version, classes 1 through 4 characteristically have dense, unresolvable cores. The densest would be with class 1, which would take up most of the core. And then as you work up your way towards 4, that dense, unresolvable portion gets progressively smaller and confined toward the center of the cluster. When you move into classes 5 through 8, the cores become resolvable. And this produces the well-known snowball of stars effect that we see in well-known globulars like M13, Omega Centauri, and M92. When we get up to classes 9 through 12, the characteristic there is that the cores break apart. And you can actually visibly see gaps between the stars. And the gaps, they get wider and wider as we move from class 9 to class 12. Most class 12 globular clusters are visually indistinguishable from an open circular star cluster in our Milky Way. And the gaps are so good that if you felt like you had an infinite amount of time, you could actually count all the individual stars in the globular cluster, whereas you couldn't do that with a class 5 through 8 because all these stars are still touching each other. And certainly it's impossible where you can't even see them with classes 1 through 4. Another thing is that generally there's an increase in what I call the beehive effect from class 1 through 12. So the beehive effect is the scattering of the peripheral stars around the central core of the galaxy. And so while there are exceptions, it's a general trend that as we go higher and higher and higher, we get more and more beehive effect of loose scattered peripheral stars. So if you look within the Messier catalog, we have an example of at least one of each of the 12 types of Shapley-Sawyer globular clusters, with the exception of class 12. There are no class 12s. The thing I refer people to for class 12 is Pommier 12, which is a cluster in Capricornus that you can see. And it literally does look just like a circular star cluster, if you can see that. The most common type of Shapley-Sawyer cluster is type 5, of which there are 7. And then this is a list of what are considered to be the archetypal globular clusters for each class. So, this would be a great project for any astrophotographer who wants to increase their portfolio on globular clusters is, go get one of each type. Or even if you got half of these, I think that would keep you busy for quite a while trying to get each examples of these Shapley-Sawyer types. And then lastly, we have features that we can see within the globular star cluster itself. So the most famous of these, and it's already been mentioned, is the dark lanes in M13 and Hercules. So this is a chalk drawing done approximately 1850 by Irish astronomer Bindon Stoney, looking at M13 through William Parsons' 72-inch Leviathan telescope at Birr Castle. And besides these streamers and the central, barely resolvable core, he very prominently drew this Y-shaped set of dark lanes. And another important feature is that he drew in some of the globular star cluster members on our side of those. So that shows that this is not some object between us and the M13 silhouetted against it, because we wouldn't see globular star cluster members silhouetted or lit up against that. So the modern name for this is the propeller, because it looks like a 3-bladed airplane propeller. And so here is my image of M13, and you can see the propeller right there. Later on during the demonstration, we'll talk how we can put features like this into our images and have them show up. What the propeller is hotly debated. Some astronomers say this is just a region in which there are fewer globular star cluster members, giving the illusion of dark lanes. Others say there's just no way that they would line up so perfectly like that, and that this is actual dark obscuring material. Regardless of that, the fact that globular star clusters do have obscuring nebulosity has been proven, and it's a well-known fact, first published back in the 1960s. And we'll look at some other examples of this. So this is M2 in Aquarius. It is a class 2 Shapley-Sawyer globular cluster. So it is one of the largest and densest globular star clusters known to exist anywhere. But if you look down here at the bottom, you can see there's this very nice dark lane. And to me, it even looks like it's an X of two crossing dark lanes. And this is visible visually if you look at the globular cluster under reasonably dark skies with a decent aperture. And so this was published in the August 2024 issue of Astronomy. Going back to M92 and Hercules, there's a dark object over here in the periphery at the 3 o'clock radial. And if we zoom in on that, I thought that looked like a question mark without a period. So I dubbed this the question mark nebula within M92. And this got published in an issue of Astronomy. M3 in Canis Venatici is a class 6 globular star cluster. It's probably the best known globular star cluster in the northern hemisphere after M13 itself. What I think is really cool about this is that it has this squiggly dark lane going across the northern half of the cluster, which you can see outlined right there. And if we zoom in, that gives you a little bit better view of it. So this gives this globular star cluster the impression of a cracked egg or a cracked glass globe with this dark material stretching across it. So we'll take a break there before we go on to actual processing and see if anybody has any questions about globulars. Meryl? Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Rod. You took these images. Roughly how many hours did you have of imaging? Did you have to do?
Most of these are in the 5 to 6 hour range.
Okay.
Do you have, how long do you typically do your exposures?
I do 5-minute subs for both the luminance and each of the 3 color channels.
Even when you're shooting bright clusters like M13?
Yep.
Okay.
If I get some bleed out of some pixels, then I will go back and shoot some very short exposures and I can substitute those in.
It's true.
Well, I did a count on mine. I've got 12 I've done so far.
12 globulars? Good.
Yep.
You're on the 95th percentile of globular images. So
How many classes do you have, John?
I haven't figured that out yet. I have to go back and see the little chart and go count them all up again. I got one NGC globular clusters near Lagoon Nebula when I did the wide field with the Lagoon and Trifid and M21, the open star, the bottom right area where Lagoon is sitting just past that is a globular cluster down there.
yeah.
Did you get polymer 12 that Rod was talking about earlier? The class
Doubt it.
1? No.
Class 12. I can't even make a decent image out of it, Steve. It's like, if you
Okay.
really twist my arm, I'll pull up my raw file.
All right.
And another problem with it is there are some incredibly, relatively much brighter Milky Way stars in front of it. They just kind of ruin the image. But visually, it didn't look that bright.
So I was looking at my M13 that I did, and mine's a lot more saturated than yours. So you're going to tell us the proper level of saturation?
You mean in terms of like it's whited out?
No, the stars themselves.
Stars. Yeah, I've got a trick for that that I'll try to show you.
That'd be good.
All right, should we move on?
Well, I was going to let you go until you answered that question. So, you seem to get a higher dynamic range out of these things than most I've seen. So, I would love seeing how you're managing that.
That's coming up, Rick.
All right, thank you.
All right, so let's go on to processing globular cluster image data. So I think a good image of a globular cluster has several components. One is we want to capture the beehive effect around the periphery and show these scattered distant members to make the image dramatic and captivating. We want to get resolution in the core, at least as much as possible. And I think that's just what Rick was talking about, is getting that dynamic range. But there's a limit, and we still want to respect the Shapley-Sawyer class somewhat. So I definitely need to do some corrections to keep the Shapley-Sawyer class at least looking somewhat representative of what this clusters class is. Then I want to work on details within the globular cluster if we have them, like the propeller, the crack in M3, the question mark in M92, etc. And we got to work on the star colors. And there are two different things. One is we want to get the colors in the globular itself. They have mostly white stars, but we have red giants and we have blue stragglers. And the new thing that's emerging in the field of astronomy is like, how do we get blue giants in star clusters that are 12 to 13 billion years old? Blue giants, you know, they live only a few million years before they go supernova. So there shouldn't be any, and yet they're there. And so it is now being determined that these are likely due to collisions of red giants, and the two fuse, and then together their mass adds up to a new blue giant, which means, you know, there's never been a supernova recorded in a globular cluster, but if we form some new blue giants, it might happen in our lifetime, guys. We might, you know, wouldn't that be a cool picture to get? And then we need to de-emphasize the distracting bright foreground stars. The star of the image really ought to be the globular cluster, and some of these things have some pretty bright foreground stars, so we need to work on de-emphasizing those. So globular clusters have an incredible dynamic range. I think they can be worse than galaxies. I mean, we all work on galaxies where the core is very, very bright, and we're trying to bring out these faint bright spiral, or these very faint spiral arms, and getting it all to show up at once. It's not much different with globular star clusters. And M2, as I said earlier, which is a class 2, one of the densest globular star clusters known, shows this very well photometrically. It's a fact that if you take a 1 by 1 arc second area in the core of M2, it is putting out a whopping 37% of its total light output. If you just move 5 arc seconds away from the core, that region of the globular cluster is putting out a mere 0.02% of the total light. So that's a challenge. How do we make this all show up together without blowing out the core or dropping out the beehive effect? So there are lots of ways that people process globular star clusters. I mean, the common ways are curves in Photoshop. You can also do high dynamic range processing in Photoshop. If you're in PixInsight, you can take the screen transfer function, which does a pretty nice job, move that curve that it generates to your histogram transformation and make it permanent. And then you can work on some details and things with high dynamic range multi-scale transform in PixInsight. These all work. They're all very common techniques. They're probably what you're using. The thing I don't like about it is that we end up with these burned out cores where we're not seeing the stars in the core as well as we would like to. So I'll go over my globular processing routine. I know a lot of you guys are big PixInsight fans. I will have to disclose that I'm neither a Photoshop nor a PixInsight purist. I will switch back and forth between programs willy-nilly because I want to use whatever works. And so I don't believe in being a purist in either. I've obviously had a lot more experience with Photoshop because it's been around for more decades. Now, the next full disclosure is to do what I do to get the dynamic range, you're going to need Maxim DL. It's an older program, but a lot of us have it and a lot of us still use it. I mean, my plane wave telescope still runs the L500 mount and the camera using Maxim DL. If you don't have it, you probably have a friend that does, so you can send them a file and say, do this and send it back to me. But this is a fast, easy technique, and I think it produces great results. So let's do a demonstration. I'm going to go with my Messier 13 data. We'll pull up another couple of examples of globulars, but this is going to be chiefly done with M13. So let us get out of this. We're going to go into PixInsight. So has everybody got my PixInsight screen showing here? Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, now I have lots of data sets of M13, and some of them are very good and very pure. That's not life. So I'm going to use one of my more messed up data sets so that we can, actually deal with real life problems here. So. Got this on a peripheral drive, so it takes a while for it to find it sometimes. But not this long. Open. There we go. All right. So I've already taken the luminance data and run it through weighted batch preprocessing in PixInsight. And no, that's not it. File, open, master L fit. That should be it right there. No. Well, I obviously wrecked something. I shouldn't have done that. Let's see if I can go get the other one, the original, from my other folder. M13. There it is. Okay, so there's the master stack. And I'm going to just see what we've got by hitting the screen transfer function. And there we go. So you can see these are real data. We've got a gradient going from the lower left to the upper right. That's thanks to my friendly neighborhood street lamp. That's over in the east. And we've got a dust donut down here that didn't get processed out with the flat fielding. So those are some issues we're going to have to deal with. But what I like about this is the beehive effect. It's really good with the screen transfer function, but we've got the burned out core and we can see a bit of the propeller. So I would like to keep the beehive effect from this image. So first thing I want to do is run blur exterminator on it and make the stars a little sharper. So we'll throw that on it. And now you can see the stars are a bit tighter. We can go back and forth between, there's undo, there's redo. So I like that. And so I would like to keep the beehive effect here. And so I'm going to do that by making this permanent. So I'm going to go to intensity transformations, pull up histogram transformation. And I will take this instance that we have and just move it down here. So there's the curve. I think this is what works, is the fact that the curve is so steep at the beginning that it really brings out the beehive effect. Go back and reset this and then throw the permanent change on. And there it is. Now, if you want to keep working in PixInsight, we can get rid of this gradient. And automatic background extractor usually works just fine for me with my data. So we'll go to subtraction for the correction, throw that on there. And now we have a much flatter background. It's bright, but we can darken it up later. But I am going to save this as a TIFF, 16-bit, that I can take into Photoshop. And I'll show you how to get rid of the gradient if you're a Photoshop person and go forward from that. So let's switch to Photoshop. And I called that M13 Master L with Blur Exterminator and Histogram Transformation. So here's that image. That's already after I've worked on it. We're not going to save that. Let's pull it up here. There it is. Okay, so I want to get rid of this gradient here, and I use Russ Croman's Gradient Exterminator, but you could use Graxpert and things like that as well. So for that, I first select the entire image, and then we use the lasso tool and set it to exclude, and we're going to cut out the things we don't want it to wipe out because they're bright. So I will encircle with the lasso the entire globular cluster. I don't want that changed. And this bright star here will have a halo around it, but if I leave it in the field, it's going to make a dark circle around it. And I would like that halo. At this point, we don't know if it's yellow, red, or blue. We'll find that out later. So we'll also exclude that from the process. And then go filter, Russ Croman, Astro, Gradient Exterminator, and I set it to coarse for the detail and high for the strength. And almost instantly, it evens that out a lot. Then we deselect things. And Gradient Exterminator really does well with two passes. One done like the way I did it first with just the lasso, but the next is done with the magic wand tool. So if you set it to an 11 by 11 sample, a tolerance of 15, and just click in the background, it picks up the background and excludes the stars. But once again, we want to make absolutely sure it doesn't wipe out our globular. So we'll put an exclusion lasso around that. And we don't want to wipe out our halo around our star. And now we run Gradient Exterminator second pass. This time I'm going to go with fine detail and high strength. And this takes a bit longer. And deselect it. And now we have a very smooth background except for this persistent dust donut here. Well, we can darken this up. If you look at the histogram, we now have a very nice cliff here at the heel of the histogram. And so we can darken that up pretty much just to the point where we still have our dust donut. Okay, so this, as I said earlier, it's great for the beehive effect. I like that a lot. The core is burned out, and we want to try to put the detail back in that. So this is where we need, oh gosh, I didn't want to do that now. Adjust
Can you
levels.
go back in history?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Except I think I closed it.
Yeah, I don't think you hit OK on it or anything.
You guys are in front of my history thing. I don't know. Can I move that? All right. I think we're back to about where we want to be. Okay, so now I want to get this core back. So here's the trick. Go into MaxMDL, open up our original file, which I think I'd wrecked earlier. So I got to go into Master L VXT. There it is. And we'll back out and we got to get the histogram, which is behind you guys. So there's the histogram. So if we move the histogram, carrots, there it is. Okay. Now, under filter, we have a thing called digital development. If you go in PixInsight, there is digital development, but it's labeled obsolete. It's under the obsolete category. I would argue against that. I don't think digital development is obsolete. I think it works great on globular star clusters. I have not been able to make the digital development in PixInsight do what this digital development in MaximDL does precisely. I get a fairly good facsimile, but it's still not quite as good. So that's why I said, I think you really need that. So this is just the raw master file with Blur Exterminator applied to it. And so I pull up digital development and it gives you this menu. So what we want is filter type. We want FFT low pass, the FFT hardness mild, and then it needs to know what's the background and what's the mid-level in the image. I just check the auto boxes and it will do that for itself. And then with that set, hit OK and just wait for the magic to happen. Boom. That is spectacular. It's too dim, but if we, and see, if you look at the histogram, we got a lot of noise out here. We don't need any of that. But if we brighten this up, that's how you get the dynamic range back, Rick. So this works great for the core of the cluster, but it doesn't work on anything else. Our beehive effect is just flat. The peripheral stars are ruined. The galaxy's messed up, but I love the core. So I'm going to save a copy of this. And so to do that, you have to go File, Save As, and I think this is how I ruined it earlier. Go into the MASfits, and I picked it as LBXT Digital Development. But you need to change this to get in Photoshop to being a TIFF. It needs to be changed from 8-bit to 16-bit. And manual stretch, we want, not max, but we actually want the screen stretch that we produced here in 16-bit. And say okay to that, and then we save it. So now let's go back to Photoshop. Here's our PixInsight image. And I'm now going to open up that MaximDL digital development image. And there it is. And again, we can see this, we've got a gradient, but we can get rid of that real quickly again. We just say select all. Take the lasso, exclude the globular, exclude the bright star, filter RC Astro, not that one. Sorry about that. Oops.
While that's reloading, Rod, is it do you feather those selections?
Not yet. No, I'm not feathering anything yet.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think, can I say reopen? I think I lost my previous image after all those steps. Sorry. This is real-time stuff, right?
That's right. No worries.
We're not in a hurry.
Right. So I'll go back and recreate this. Select all. In case you didn't catch it the first time.
Yeah, we're recording though, so
You can edit this out.
no, I think it's good. We can refer to it.
Okay, there's the first pass, then the magic wand, and select, go to exclude. So with that lasso. Filter, RC Astro, gradient exterminator, fine and high. Deselect, darken it up All right, I think we're back where we were. And I will be more careful with my mouse clicking now. Okay, so here we have our PixInsight image. Here was our digital,
No, don't you have to go to
here's our
Mac?
digital development.
Yeah, you
And
got,
we gotta, yeah, we gotta do the gradient on this one, right?
yeah, there you go.
Select all, exclude that, exclude that, filter, gradient exterminator, coarse and fine should be good enough. All right, we're back where we wanted to be. So I want to combine the best of these two universes. So I'm going to take this image, say select all, edit, copy, go to my PixInsight image and say edit, paste, and put it right on top. Now I've got two layers, and I'm going to put a mask on top, a hide all mask on top of this first layer. So we can label these. This is Dig Development. And this one's PixInsight. Okay, so let's put a hide all mask on the digital development. And now we're going to go get our brush tool and set it to white. And we want to make a brush that's about the size of this burned out core. I want to keep all this peripheral beehive stuff. So I'm going to put this brush over here so you can see its sides because it gets lost in the globular. But something right about that will basically preserve all the nice beehive stuff. And so I center that right over the globular, make sure we're on the mask, and just hit it once. And now we have the best of both universes. We've got the bright resolution of the core, we've got the beehive effect, and all the peripheral stars look great. There's still a couple things I don't like. The digital development is flat across the core, and globulars ought to be brighter in the center. And so this is where we adjust for the Shapley-Sawyer. We do that with opacity because the underlying image is brighter toward the core. So if you just go to opacity and you back this down a bit, the core gets brighter, but it keeps the resolution. And so for a Shapley-Sawyer class 1 or 2 cluster, I'm going to drop this way down here so that the core itself still has the impression of being unresolved. But for like a 7, 8, I'm going to leave it up here at 80% so that the core looks brighter, but still has the resolution. So that gives me the best of both universes. And now I flatten that image. Okay, so I've left the background a little bright so I can get rid of the dust donut. So I'm going to teach you guys one of my favorite dust donut tricks. So PixInsight, Gradient Exterminator has done a great job of evening this background. If you check around with the color sampler tool, you're going to see we've got the same values essentially everywhere except the halo around the bright star and the dust donut. So I'm going to get a sample of that. So I take the eyedropper tool and I just pick a nice background spot and sample it with an 11 by 11 sample. And now that color is in here. And I hit select all, edit, copy, go to file, new. And here's the clipboard. That's what got copied, were the dimensions of that image. And so I say create, and I get a white image like that. But I've got my color of the background in this square. And so if you go right here, you get the paint bucket, drop that on there. There's our background color. It doesn't have any noise in it. It's going to be too smooth, which the human eye expects to see some noise. So this is sacrilege, but I'm going to add a little noise to that. And I find 3% does quite nicely at looking like a real CCD chip. All right, now we say select all, edit, copy, go back to and hit edit, paste. So now we've got our background color over the front of this. We're going to change the blending mode to lighten. When you go lighten, Photoshop compares the brightness value of every pixel in the two layers and always picks the brighter of the two. So we're just going to get our background color back everywhere except this dust donut. And everything else is still in there. The trick now is to select the background, pull up your levels, keep your eye on this. I'll make it bigger for you. Keep your eye on the dust donut. And now as you slowly drop the background, that dust donut vanishes. And the rest of the image stays. And then just hit OK. So you've got your original background, you've got all your original detail, but we wiped out the dust donut. So now I'm going to say flatten image. The last thing that I'm missing because of the digital development is the propeller. So we can bring that back with the high pass filter. So I go new layer, filter, other, high pass. So this is just like wavelets in PixInsight. As we slide the radius, we pick larger and larger scale structures. And so I'm looking for that propeller to pop back into the image as I increase the slider. And there it's starting to come in. Say around 8 pixels, I can see it. So go there. And now I'm going to, again, put a hide all mask because I don't want all that noise. Change the blending mode to overlay. Go get your brush tool. Leave it on white. This time I need a very tiny brush. And just paint back in the propeller. There it is. And if you want more of it, just duplicate that layer and you get more. And if that's too much, well, just dial back the second layer with opacity a bit. And then, yes, this is the selection I feather. On these filters, I'm going to go image, blur. I mean, I blur them is what I do. But that looks fine. We'll leave it like that just for demonstration purposes. So that's my luminance, folks. It's got no dust donuts, a very smooth background, peripheral beehive effect, tremendous resolution in the core and the propeller. Another example, let's go for the high pass filter. Expansion. Probably should have put this folder on my desktop because it just takes so. But we got time, right?
Yes.
Honestly, I don't know why this takes so long. Never does this in real life. There we go. All right, here's M3 for a high pass demonstration. So here's my stretched image of M3. I'll zoom this in for you. And again, we were trying to get that crack. So make another layer. Go filter, other, high pass. And again, slide the radius selector gradually until that line starts showing up, which I think it looks most prominent at about 8 pixels. Say OK. Cover that up with a hide all mask. Change the blending mode to overlay. Go get your brush tool. Leave it on white. Small brush. And draw in a line. And if we zoom in, here's without the high pass. There's with the high pass. So it really makes it pop out. Looks like I can reverse the mask a little bit here because it looks like I got some of these background stars that I don't want highlighted. And again, if you want more than that, just add another layer. That's too much. Back it down with opacity, just to your taste, whatever you'd like. So that's another demonstration of that. Okay, so now that's what we wanted. We'll get rid of that, get rid of that. Don't need these things. Okay, now we got to work on our RGB. So we'll go File, Open.
Can I
And
ask a quick question before you get into that?
yeah,
Just curious your thoughts. I'm definitely going to go try to rework some of mine with what you're doing now, but what are your thoughts on the, I don't know what to call it, but the concentric circle stretching of globulars, where you just kind of continually add a bigger radial mass and stretch, bigger radial mass and stretch. Do you have thoughts on that approach?
yeah, I mean, that's how I used to do it before I discovered this technique. And I mean, I've done that on the Orion Nebula and things like that, of masking things in. But once I got this, I really thought I can do this in a lot simpler steps with, I think, even better results.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, where is my master RGB?
So Steve, is Russell Croman going to do a gradient exterminator for Pix Insight?
Uh, I haven't heard.
That would be. It's just interesting that he doesn't have it for that.
You know, there's 4 or 5 good ones out there, but I still I'm kind of like Rod. Dynamic background extraction is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, he used the auto, but I'm just saying that with his other tools that are
Mhm.
AI driven.
Right. You know, RC Astro has, I mean, what's his name? SETI Astro has a good one out there.
Okay, so here's the master RGB after it's been stacked, calibrated through WPPP. And I just do very simple curve brightening up of this. Let's see if I can move that. So I have 2 preloaded curves in here. One I call my standard curve, which looks like that. So I apply that once, take the background, darken it up, give that another iteration. And now you can see we've got some color gradients. So again, I'll use gradient exterminator. So select everything, take the lasso tool on exclusion, get rid of, exclude that. Turns out that star was blue with a blue halo. Filter, gradient exterminator, coarse and high. Deselect it. Second pass with the magic wand. Select everything, take the lasso, exclude the globular, and exclude the star. This time, fine and high. And deselect. So we're getting close. I'm now going to do one more curve, but this time I use what I call my gentle curve. It's not quite as aggressive. Okay, and so that's something I can work with. So I will take that back into Pix Insight and align it to my original master so it gets registered. And I've already done that. I won't waste your time. So let's go here. So that is the registered version. And there it is. So we're going to take this, which was our finished luminance frame, and select it. and put it on top of our master RGB. Edit, paste. Uh-oh, no, you know what I didn't do? I didn't flatten that. Flatten image. Okay, now do it again. Select all, edit. All we got was that propeller mask. Go here, trash that. Okay, edit, paste. And I usually make this RGB layer, so we're going to call this luminance. And this is RGB. It's locked, so I usually make another copy of it just so I can manipulate it. Okay, so we're going to combine this with the luminosity blending mode. And now our color is coming through. I don't want any of the noise in the background sky of the RGB to come through to my beautiful background. So I'm going to put a mask on the RGB layer to only put the color where I want it. So let's just go to the RGB layer, make a mask, go into the mask, and we already have a copy of the luminance, so we can just paste it there. But we're going to turn it into a mask. And of course, you can do this in PixInsight with masks. By the way, you can combine those, the digital development and the PixInsight image in PixInsight just using Pixel Math. And if you wanted 80% like for opacity, you can do that with Pixel Math as well. So I should describe how you can do these things. So that's a pretty good mask in which none of the background color in the RGB image is going to come through. But all the globular and all the clusters will. So we go back there. That's given us that. Now, a couple tricks. One is on the color layer. This is an atom block trick. Go image, adjust, shadow highlights. And if you take the shadow, you want to put the highlights down to 0, amount of 0. But if you take the shadow amount and turn it up, you just get glorious color coming into this. And you can even do a little bit of color adjustment down here. Now that is the first step in boosting our color in the image. Later on, we're going to do a lab color adjustment. The second trick is anything, if you look at, I mean, turn off the mask, that doesn't look like any thing that would help your color, but that's all that's being, when we combine with luminosity blending mode, that's all we're bringing out of this image are the colors. All that other noise doesn't get transferred. And the mask also keeps everything else out. So that gives us more of our colors in there. The second trick is that anything you do that increases contrast in your RGB will bring out more color. So pull up levels and watch as we use the black point slider and slide it to the left, the color gets even richer. Eventually you get to a point where you don't get any more, which is usually somewhere right about in the middle of the histogram. But that has given us a lot more color like that. Now the next thing I do is I move this into lab color mode. I don't want to merge the images. I want to keep them separate. And I pull up image, adjust, curves. This is another way to increase contrast in your color, which gives a much richer color. So we have an A channel, which controls reds and greens. There shouldn't be any greens in an astro image. So it's really going to control you put an inflection point right in the middle, set it to 0, 0, grab the curve here and pull up, and see that increases our reds. Grab here on this line and pull down by the same amount. And that has increased our red. So our red giants in our globular cluster look a lot better. It looks like some of that, oh, I know, I've got the color mask disabled. We want to re-enable it. I'm going to say, disable. Okay, now the red in the background's gone. You can see why I wanted that mask, because if you didn't, you would have brought out all that color. And then the next curve is the B curve in lab mode. Again, make an inflection point in the middle, 0, 0. I happen to hit it. Pull up here. And you don't want to get to the point where you jump with a shark, but you really want to bring those red giants out with the A channel, and you want to bring the blue stragglers out with the B channel. And there we have that. And now we can go back to RGB mode. So now we're getting really colorful stuff. The thing I don't like is that we've got too much halo around the red giant stars in the foreground, but there's a way to get rid of that. So we just go here to flatten image. Say, okay, I'll make a duplicate copy because I don't want my red giants in my globular cluster to lose their colors. But if you go to image, adjust, selective color, pull up the reds, which is there, and just turn down the black. And turn up the cyan. And the halos are gone, but the color of the star disk, the profile, is still really, really good. As I said, I didn't want to lose it in there, so I'll basically put a hide all mask on this, and I'm just going to use the brush to fix these red giants that I don't, oh, I want to make that white. Boom, 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 boom. And any others I don't like, but you can just sort of go around the image and do that. But I've kept the red in the blue giants. So flatten that. Now, the only other thing is this star. This is visual psychology. It's like your eye is drawn to that star. So there are a couple ways to diminish that. Again, let's make another layer so we can only pick what we want. And I can go to Rust Chrome and has star shrink. And if we look over here, we can set the radius. I don't recommend any sharpening. It ruins the profile of the stars. They turn into little flat disks, which I don't like. So that makes that a lot smaller. Say okay. And I don't want it to work on any of my other stars. So I'll just put a mask on and take the brush and boom, there. I've reduced that star so it's not as distracting. We've got another example of this, which is M71. So this is the original way M71 looked, and these two stars are way brighter than the globular cluster. So again, I would like to reduce those. So we'll go Filter, RC Astro, Star Shrink, move that over here, and it's what works. Something about like that. And now these are much diminished and look better. But the human brain looks at pictures just like we read books. We start here and move along. And if you've got bright stuff here, your eye leaves the image here and you don't come back. So it's much better to have bright things on the left side of an image, preferably left upper corner. That will bring you back into the image, keep your viewer coming back to the image, and then due to natural reading, they'll see your subject. With here, they're going to be distracted and they're not going to stay in the image. So we can fix that because there's no up or down in space. Image, adjust, rotation, give it a 180. Now these stars are here, which will bring us into the image. And I'd publish it that way. All right, well, that's a drink out of a fire hydrant when you wanted a Dixie cup of water. But let's stop there and see if we have any other remaining questions. And the saturation can be done in PixInsight with ArcSine or the saturation curves. There are ways to do these in both programs.
Have you ever tried just doing it fully in PixInsight?
Yeah, I just don't get these good of results without that Maxim
All right.
DL trick.
Okay. If you had the digital development in Pix Insight, would you stick with Pix Insight?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I love Pix Insight for weighted batch preprocessing. I love the screen stretch. I love background extraction. I love HDR multi-transform to bring out details in core galaxies. But as I said, I'm still not a purist.
For those, if somebody has something that needs Maxim DL, I have it, so I can run it for you if you want.
Thank you. That's great.
I used to use it to control my CDK, but I find Nina does a better job of it.
You find what? Oh, Nina.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've not switched to Nina yet. So let's see. How close did I get to my where is this thing? That's that. Don't save. That's M13. There's that. I'll pull up my own published version of M13. It's that one. We did pretty close. Pretty close.
Yeah. Very good job.
So on the fly, I guess I'm reproducible.
That's good.
Rod, I got a question. Are we ready for some questions?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so you did that little wavelet technique, and I'm familiar with that more in Pix Insight than Photoshop. And in Photoshop, what was that tool again?
It was the high pass filter.
Okay, the high pass filter. Is it your recommendation that you just open up, that maybe stretch it and do a high pass filter and just look for those type of
Yeah,
blemishes,
and I
for
mean,
lack of a better term?
and you can do that in galaxies. It's like you take one high pass filter level for the spiral arms and paint in the spiral arms, and you can do another high pass filter level for the star clouds and the spiral arms, and then paint those in. And then you can do another one for the dust lanes and paint those in. And so I may have a stack of high pass filters at different resolutions, and I can do that in Pix Insight with HDR and doing setting at 6, 5, etc., and pulling out different levels of detail that way. But it's still hard to combine all those things in Pix Insight. It takes a lot of calculations of pixel math and masking, whereas with Photoshop, it's still pretty facile to just paint it in fast where you want it and leave the rest.
So is it?
Would you mind zooming into the core of that?
And I mean, I may do something in HDMR in Pix Insight and just make a TIFF out of it and move it into Photoshop and paint it in as one of my layers, as opposed to something I extracted with high pass.
With the new SETI Astro tools, you can make masks really easy,
really fast. Yeah,
yeah. With Fame and so I understand. Any other questions for Rod?
Would you zoom into the core some more? Yeah, that's nice.
That is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now everybody knows my trick.
Maybe we'll get published.
I hope you do. I really do. That's the whole point of all this sharing is, making it good on everyone. But that's not quite the view you had of Omega Centauri, Rick. But I hope it brings back memories for you.
It does. It's beautiful.
Your color is just fabulous too. That's
almost worth an Emmy.
So, Rod, what I like about what I saw there is that you weren't playing a whole lot with saturation. You were doing everything with the levels to get the color.
Yeah.
And clever use of masks. Really clever way to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Anything else for Rod before we finish him up?
Well, that was a lot to digest. I'll be
chewing
on that for a while.
Yeah, unfortunately,
go back and watch the reruns.
Yeah.
I'll have it done tomorrow.
Oh, very good, Meryl.
Okay.
Well, I hope you liked what you saw. That's all
No,
I can
you did a great job. I really appreciate you.
Well
taking
done,
the
Ryan.
time.
Yes, very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
I'm going to join your group, by the way. I'm going to send you $25. I want to
Oh,
be a
well.
member of this society.
we will take it.
Okay.
Um, are you, I mean, your presentation next few weeks, the LDN, is that something that astrophotography based, I assume?
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I could give you guys a sneak preview if you want to see it. But
We got a few minutes, guys?
Oh, yeah.
I guess.
all right, let me see if I can pull that up. This is an interesting thing I discovered. Let's see. I guess I want to go to Finder, desktop.
Which Mac are you using?
What's that?
What Macintosh are you using?
Got me. It's the one my wife gave me for Christmas to try to convert me from PC to Mac, and she succeeded.
I'm hooked too, but we got a Microsoft software engineer. I got to dial it down a bit.
You know, if you guys, I came into some kind of a conversation when I first LDN project. There it is. About how long WPP takes, and it's like, honestly, this thing does it in minutes.
And and just to let you know, the Macs are using their own custom silicon,
Yeah.
and it's going through an emulator that is rendering, your Windows type processors,
Mhm.
and they're about ready to compile on the Mac, and it's going to be lightning fast when that happens.
I know my son was telling me the same thing. He just said, you need to get another one because he says it's going to do it in second. I ran WPP on a PC for him and it's like, come back tomorrow. And then you'll find out it's stalled on some step and runs here and it just happens. And he said, it'll do it in seconds in the future. So the interesting thing about this is that if you have posted images in which you've tried to identify Lynn's dark nebulae, odds are really high they are misidentified. And it's also high that there will be Lynn's dark nebulae plainly visible in your image that remain unidentified. And I mean, I've posted some images of Lynn's dark nebulae, and I now know that they were misidentified and unidentified. But don't worry about me. I couldn't stand the embarrassment and humiliation. I took all those images down. But I then searched the internet, and the internet's just riddled with misidentified LDNs. And so that's a problem that needs solving. And it's not our fault because PixInsight, Aladdin Sky Atlas, Stellarium, WikiSky are woefully inadequate at identifying Lynn's dark nebulae. And to be quite frank, they're just downright inaccurate. So I'll show you some demonstrations of this. It's like I shot these are 3 images of Lynn's dark nebulae. This is an area in IC 1396, not far from the Elephant Nebula, and I got all these Lynn's dark nebulae that I got in here. Here is another area just off of the Elephant Trunk Nebula. This is called the Frog Nebula because it kind of looks like a frog with his 2 eyes and legs, even with webbed feet. Other people call it the Squished Frog Nebula because it looks like blood and guts. And even as a cancer surgeon, that goes a bit far for me. And this is an area just off of the North America and Pelican Nebula. So, interesting dark nebulae. The question is, what are they? How do you identify these? So, here's another example. Like this is Bev's obituary that I wrote for Beverly Lynn's when she died. And it says, they were very nice. Besides my text, they put in this image of the Cosmic Bat Nebula, but it says up here, it's Lynn's Dark Nebula 125 in Cepheus. Well, wrong. It's not. It's Lynn's Dark Nebula 43, and it's not even in Cepheus. It's in Ophiuchus. So even in her obituary, they couldn't get it right. And here's the problem with the catalog. It's not photographic. It's all text. So who knows what are the shapes of any of these objects? And the area doesn't help. It gives us an idea of how big it is, but a 0.25 square degrees could be a round globular or long drawn out filament. So let's see, let me just jump ahead. Here's the problem when we try to identify these things. I know for a fact that this thing up here is Barnard 161 from Barnard's catalog. There are other sources that say Barnard 161 is also Lynds Dark Nebula 111. So that gives me a starting point. So I went to the Aladdin Sky Atlas and I said, search for LDN 111, and it put the crosshair right on that. So far, so good. Went to Stellarium, said, search for LDN 1111, put the little thing right there. So we're doing great. And it gives me the coordinates of it up here. PixInsight disagrees. While it puts a circle here saying this is Barnard 161, there's a circle down here on nothing that says that's Lynds Dark Nebula 111. Over here, it puts a circle around this, sort of, saying that's Lynds Dark Nebula 1121, which I think is also correct. But, look at up here. It says this is Lynds Dark Nebula 1124. There's nothing there but stars. And down here, it says Lynds Dark Nebula 1112. Well, are we talking about these little wisps here? I mean, maybe. But that means, like, what is that dark nebula? And what is this dark nebula? And one thing I really wanted was all this trailing stuff coming out behind Barnard 161. What is that stuff? So, this could be explained by precession. The coordinates in the catalog are 1950, and PixInsight's using 2025. Well, unfortunately, the shift for precession's in the opposite direction of the direction these circles are shifted. So precession doesn't explain this. I've tried putting looking up the areas of the circles, pi r squared. It doesn't match the sizes that she lists in the catalog. And I said, well, maybe it's some other kind of frame shift. We know that Barnard 161 should be Lynds Dark Nebula 111. So what if we just shift it up here and bring all the other circles along with it? Well, that moves this one here where there's nothing. It takes Lynds Dark Nebula 1121 off the correct object and puts it in no place. And that one goes completely off the field. So it's just, nothing works. Looking at this object, the Frog Nebula, this says it's Barnard 163, which is also correct according to Barnard's catalog, but it labels it as Lynds Dark Nebula 1104. And I've seen plenty of published images of this object saying it's Lynds Dark Nebula 114. Well, what about that? It says there's a nebula overlapping with it, but I don't see anything that overlaps with it. It's not big enough to cover the frog, whereas this one is Lynds Dark Nebula 1106 up here where there's nothing. So once again, maybe we should shift that down here. So if you do that, that shifts this circle here and the little overlapping one there where it's on nothing. We still don't have an ID for that. We don't have an ID for that. We don't have an ID for that or this. And if you could, if you ask the other programs, where's LDN 1103? It puts it in the middle of nothing on Stellarium, puts it in the middle of nothing on the Aladdin Sky Atlas. This is just a problem. And then for this, I looked up objects. I wanted to know what that is. That's the prettiest object. And when I look in her catalog, the closest objects that would be the right size would be LDN 947 and 951. And if I look up LDN 951, it says, yep, that's what that is on Stellarium. And it says that's what it is on the Aladdin Sky Atlas. Once again, PixInsight disagrees. There is no LDN 951 circle anywhere on this image. Instead, we've got a big LDN 949 on this wispy stuff. I don't know. These other circles are a little offset from actual dark nebulae. So maybe if we shifted them over, they'd be right, but it still doesn't tell me what that object that is the feature of my image is. So I just gave up. So you guys want to know what my solution is?
Of course.
Sure.
One of my best friends was Beverly Turner Lynds. She only lived a few blocks from me. And we became great astronomy buddies years ago. And, we met monthly for lunches and at restaurants and at our houses. And she showered me with astronomy gifts from the time we met. She gave me papers she published. She gave me books from her library. She actually left her entire astronomy library to me in her will when she died last year. But these are my most precious gifts from her. She gave me original 1962 editions of the Astrophysical Journal and 1965 editions of the Astrophysical Journal of her Dark Nebula catalog and her Bright Nebula catalog, which she autographed to me. So, I mean, how cool is that to have these actual original editions from autographed by Beverly herself? But this is the most remarkable thing she gave me. It's a microfilm of her images of the dark nebulae. She traced them off the Palomar Observatory sky plates.
Oh.
And so, as far as she knew, this is the only surviving copy of her original tracings. And she gave it to me. She says, it's yours to keep. So I took it to a library and fed it into a microfilm reader. And sure enough, these are her original tracings. But the interesting thing is, you know, on all of these things, I scanned it. She put in right ascension. She put in lines of declination. She wrote down the area that she measured for each dark nebula. She put down a rating of its darkness from 1 to 6 and a check mark when she put it in her catalog. But she didn't put a number of the object by a single one of these nebulae. And so I thought, you know, which are these? But then I realized I could solve this problem. If I go through her entire catalog and all these pictures and label them, we would know what these things really look like. So this is the area of IC 1396, her drawing, and I've gone through and found all of these objects. And there's the elephant trunk. So zooming in, here's that frog nebula. And you can see there, and if we put it right next to my image, you can see that this entire frog with the streaming guts and blood is all Lynn's Dark Nebula 1106. It's not 1104 like you see in the pictures. 1104 is the trailing part of this, and 1103 is the dark part of it. Down here is 1095, up here is 1101. You can see these things. And you know, it's interesting because this was the overlap. It was clearly supposed to be 1104 overlapping with 1103, but here it shows it kind of in an east-west direction, but they're really trailing in a north-south direction. I mean, it's just screwed up. And 1106 is way up here. Barnard 163 is correct, but it's just all messed up. And here's the region east of the North American Nebula. And if you zoom in, you can now see what these things are. And it turns out that PixInsight was correct. There is no 951 on this image. This entire straggling thing is this on the picture here. It's LDN 949. These little dark guys are 952 and 946. This unidentified thing was LDN 947. 951 was off the field. It's like way down there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through all of her drawings and labeling them, and I'm going to put this on the internet so that all astro imagers can find it and identify their Lynn's Dark Nebulae correctly. I'm about 70% through the countless drawings and, you know, 1,802 dark nebulae objects. But that's the topic of the talk on September 21st.
You do it in the form of a catalog that could be integrated?
You mean like a book? Well, I'm going to make one copy of the book.
Digital. So it could be loaded into the database. So something like PixInsight or anybody else could use it.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. I mean, there's one thing I'm going to ask about during the show is like, what other venues should we put this in? And it's like, I've asked Adam Block if he, you know, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Adam Block because I think he has a direct pipeline to WAN. It's like, what crazy database was used that has misplaced all of these? And, you know,
how can you replace it?
Yeah, can we replace it? so that we actually get the circles on the correct objects.
Very
Okay,
true.
I
I'm
wasted
pretty
enough
sure
time
it's
with
that
that.
European database that they're using. The European Space Agency.
You think that's what it is for the Lens Dark Nebulae?
That's what I think they use. Yeah.
Um,
I bet Adam will know the question answer to that though.
okay. Yeah, I need to contact him. I haven't spoken with him for a while, but the uh, the interesting thing is that a lot of these misplacements are absolutely consistent between PixInsight, the Aladdin Sky Atlas, Stellarium, and WikiSky. And some of them are different, like where I said, they all think that Barnard 164 is LDN 1111, but the other ones are all way off. So I can't explain the discrepancies in all these cogs, but a lot of them are similarly wrong.
Excellent. Okay,
That's gonna be interesting.
fabulous time you spent with us tonight. I don't have anything else. I did one thing of note that this is a U.S. Presentation. So we got Devin in North Carolina, McKell's in New Mexico, Joe's in California, Roger in Oregon,
Yep.
and who am I missing? Somebody else is out of the Memphis area. But it's kind of neat to have the broad base of folks here.
Yeah, truly. I thought you guys were all in Memphis. Not true.
I'm in
Well,
Mississippi.
oh, there you go. He's in Mississippi. But just great presentation tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll maybe in touch on the LDN.
Okay. Look forward to that.
Folks, any other questions, any comments before we finish up tonight?
No, but that was outstanding. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
That
much.
was great. Thanks.
Thank
I'll,
you all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'll be
All right, clear
asking
skies. Go Image.
well, thank you.
Hot weather in
Thank you.
Memphis, or I guess it doesn't matter. You're not in Memphis.
I will be asking for input for next month here shortly. So
Okay.
thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, have a good night.
Good night.